Hello, everyone. Today, we're going to take a brief look at the U.S. federal government's Counterfeit Avoidance Accreditation Program, courtesy of Dynamic Contracts Consultants. So let's get started. What is the Counterfeit Avoidance Accreditation Program, or CAP? Well, counterfeiting has been an issue for years, and it continues to grow at an exponential rate, with products being counterfeited, industries being affected, and consequences caused by counterfeit parts and products. Why and how do we need to mitigate counterfeit products and parts? What steps are we taking to mitigate risk? Strategies to eliminate counterfeit parts are avoidance, detection, mitigation, disposition, and communication. Counterfeit parts often have the appearance of being authentic and genuine, but can later be discovered that they were not, manufactured by the original component or material manufacturer. They're built to the same level of quality standards or even tested as strictly as an authentic or genuine. Many types of counterfeits are difficult to detect visually and can be made such that they seem to be authentic, functional, and can even pass early levels of testing. Well, what is the CAP program? It's an industry-managed approach that brings together technical experts from both industry and government for ensuring compliance to standards associated with the prevention, detection, and responses to the threat of counterfeit parts in aviation, space, and defense. The CAP program is first and foremost an industry-managed accreditation process. Subscribers and suppliers work together to define operational program requirements, establish requirements for accreditation, and grant accreditation. The Anti-Counterfeit Rule. The U.S. Department of Defense, the DoD, published on May the 6th of 2014 its rule regarding the detection and avoidance of counterfeit electronic parts. The rule prescribes the policies and procedures that the DoD contractors are to establish and maintain to detect and avoid the introduction of counterfeit electronic parts into the defense supply chain. In compliance with DFARS 252.246.7007 and DFARS 252.246-7008. Counterfeit Avoidance Accreditation Program in relation to the U.S. defense industry. Defense Federal Acquisition Regulation. What is a counterfeit part? Is counterfeiting really a problem? What are the real impacts of counterfeiting? Why are parts counterfeited? How are they described in supply chain industry? How do counterfeit parts get into the supply chain? How are parts typically counterfeited? What are remarking, methods, and changes? What are the indicators of reclaimed parts? And how can counterfeit risks be reduced? Anti-Counterfeit Rule. How is it affecting the electronics industry? The rule promotes the buying of electronic components from authorized sources. The DFARS, Defense Federal Acquisition Regulation Supplement, affects all electronic parts that may be required by the Department of Defense either through direct purchase or incorporated as components into products sold to the DoD. Does this apply to my company? The Defense Federal Acquisition Regulation Supplement applies to defense contractors that are subject to the Cost Accounting Standards, CAS, and further provides that these contractors flow down the requirements to all subcontractors at all tiers without regard to whether the subcontractor itself is subject to CAS or is a commercial item. As a result, Electronic components manufacturers and their authorized distributors may expect contractors to flow down the requirements set forth in the DFARS to them. The authorized supply chain should expect contractors to ask for their counterfeit detection and avoidance policy. This policy should contain provisions regarding traceability, returns, control of obsolete parts, and other processes to abolish counterfeit parts proliferation. Does this apply to my company? Yes, it does, in the following ways. The supply chain. Defective, counterfeit products emerging in the U.S. aerospace and defense industries in the supply chain. Risk analysis. Risk factor has increased for aerospace and defense industries such as product failure, revenue loss, loss of intellectual property, public safety, national security. Cost analysis. Cost would increase for warranty, inspections, testing, and restocking. Supply chain standards regarding mitigation of counterfeit parts entering the supply chain can be mitigated by industry standards such as IDEA STD 1010, SAE AS 5553, MIL STD 1580, and IEC TS 62668-1. The benefits of industry-managed program are cost savings, reducing redundancy, regulatory compliance, reduced risk, direct control and oversight, along with flexibility. Counterfeit awareness can be implemented by avoidance, detection, mitigation, and disposition. Counterfeit awareness requirements are based on SAE AS 5553 Aerospace Standard, IDEA STD 1010B Distribution Industry Standard, DODI 4140.01 DoD Supply Chain Material Management Policy, LMSSC TFUF-002599 PMP Supplier Requirement, PSEMC SQC 100 Counterfeit Prevention, PSEMC DIENG 322 HL PMP Engineering. Given the fact that counterfeit parts exist in the supply chain, how does it affect our industries and supply chain? It affects in the following ways. Safety concerns regarding military systems, satellites, medical devices and healthcare systems, aerospace, and automotive. Erosion of business confidence, intellectual property and brand damage, loss of sales, reduces ability to sustain technology development, adds costs to compensate for loss of trust in suppliers, costly rework, corrective actions, and full legal liability. No government contract funding may be used to repair or replace products found to contain counterfeit parts. How are parts counterfeited in the defense industry? The most common is remarking, legitimate parts to a newer date code, downrev parts to a higher or current level, change the manufacturer or country of origin of parts to be more saleable to a wider market, similar but unequal parts to a different device type, reclaiming used parts from the e-waste system or stream, and presenting them as unused or as feedstock for remarking, a counterfeit and ecological disaster, packaging surplus or rejected wafers as dice as if they were good parts from the original manufacturer, reverse engineering and manufacturing in low-cost facilities, marking and selling them as the legal original component manufacturer parts, the proverbial Chinese copy, sale of non-functional components, dummies to dummies, and providing false traceability for all of the above. The Caap program regarding risk analysis and mitigating risk. Purchase only from original component manufacturer, OCMs, or verified authorized distributors required by Customer Flowdown, DI-ENG 322, and Form 842 SQC 100. Require only original signed certs and documents, no photocopies or scanned and printed documents that hide changes. Verify and preserve packaging labeling, seals, and materials. Counterfeiters don't invest heavily in things that usually get thrown away at the receiving dock. Verify LCDs and quantities for all parts in a lot against OCM and distributor invoices. Date codes can be checked on many OCM websites to verify they were actually used. 70% of known counterfeit date codes were after OCM end of production. Verify part carriers, labeling, part orientation, etc. Carriers are often reclaimed by counterfeiters, never by OCMs. Parts loaded by hand don't have the repeatability of machines or the OCM's QC. Verify part number, manufacturer, part quantity for the full lot. Mixed date codes never come from the OCM. Visual part inspection per IDA 1010B checklist, 100% or large samples. Perform sample part marking tests. Detect cheap or improperly cured inks. Perform sample surface tests. Detects the presence of black topping covering the original markings. Verify and record sample dimensions, most commonly overlooked but useful for discrete components. Perform and record sample electrical, XRF, and leak tests. Many counterfeit discrete components are not the correct value. Perform and record D-lid or X-ray inspection, done on lot samples for each date code, or whenever another inspection or test identifies a lot as suspect. Document, verify, report, and properly dispose of suspected counterfeits so they cannot re-enter the supply chain. Regularly review counterfeit alerts, GI, DEP, customer, etc., and plan for obsolescence well in advance of possible need. DFARS 252.246-7007 Contractor Counterfeit Electronic Part Detection and Avoidance System required in solicitations and contracts when procuring electronic parts, end items, components, parts or assemblies containing electronic parts. Services where the contractor will supply electronic parts or components, parts, or assemblies containing electronic parts. Applies to contractors subject to cost accounting standards, CAS. Flowdown is required to subcontractors at all levels. DFARS 252.246-7008 is included under DFARS 252.246-7007C 4 and 5. Training of personnel will help in detecting counterfeit electronic parts, design and operation, and maintenance of systems to detect and avoid counterfeit electronic parts and suspect counterfeit electronic parts, inspection and testing of electronic parts, including criteria for acceptance and rejection, processes to abolish counterfeit parts proliferation, flowdown of counterfeit detection and avoidance requirements. Risk-based processes that enable tracking of electronic parts from the original manufacturer to product acceptance by the government, IAW paragraph C of the clause at 252.246-7007. Use of suppliers, IAW 252.246 7008, control of obsolete electronic parts, reporting and quarantining of counterfeit electronic parts and suspect counterfeit electronic parts, methodologies to identify suspect counterfeit electronic parts and to rapidly determine if a suspect counterfeit electronic part is in fact counterfeit, process for keeping continually informed of current counterfeiting information and trends, process for screening the Government Industry Data Exchange Program, GIDEP, reports and other credible sources of counterfeiting information. The Caap Program Flowdown Clause. It is required to flow down the DFARS Clause 252.246-7007 to the lowest level of the supply chain for electronic parts. This clause, and the same principle, applies to all DoD. Source Selection and Mitigation Risks Process. Seller shall only purchase products to be delivered or incorporated as work to the company directly from the original component manufacturer, the original equipment manufacturer, through an OCM/OEM authorized distributor chain. Seller may use another source only if the foregoing sources are unavailable. Seller's inspection and other counterfeit risk mitigation processes will be employed to ensure the authenticity of the work, and seller obtains the advance written approval of the company. Seller shall maintain counterfeit risk mitigation processes in accordance with industry-recognized standards and with any other specific requirements identified in the contract. Under the DFARS Case 2012 D-055, Detection and Avoidance of Counterfeit Electronic Parts, use existing quality inspection clauses for Federal Acquisition Regulation. 52-246-1, Contractor Inspection Requirements. 52-246-2, Inspection of Supplies, Fixed Price. 52-246-3, Inspection of Supplies, Cost, Reimbursement. 52.246-11, Higher Level Contract Quality. Enable enhanced contract quality requirements. FAR Case 2012-032, Higher Level Contract Quality Requirements. Report nonconformances impacting safety. Defense Federal Acquisition Regulation Supplement 252-246-7003, Notification of Potential Safety Issues. Improve reporting of non-conforming items. FAR Case 2013-002, Expanding reporting of non-conforming items. Regarding the federal government prime contract submitting and individual subcontract report, ISR, in the past, federal government contractors were required to file their individual subcontracting report, the ISR, on the standard paper form SF-294. The initial operating capability phase of the Electronic Subcontracting Reporting System, ESRS, was implemented in October of 2005. The federal government contractors are now required to submit their subcontracting accomplishments for federal government contracts in the ESRS, with the exception of some Department of Defense contracts. ESRS is a web-based government-wide subcontracting system that allows electronic submission, management, acceptance, revision, rejection, reports, and analyses of subcontracting data in a real-time paperless environment. In turn, there is a reduction in errors and processing time and no lost paperwork, which leaves more time for increasing subcontracting. What is an individual subcontract report, ISR? This report collects prime contractor and subcontractor subcontract award data for a specified federal government agency when a prime subcontractor holds one or more contracts over $700,000, over $1.5 million for construction of a public facility, and is required to report subcontracts awarded to small business, small disadvantaged business, women-owned small business, hub-zone small business, veteran-owned small business, service-disabled veteran-owned small business, Alaska Native corporations, and Indian tribes concerns under a subcontracting plan with the federal government. This report reflects subcontract award data for ANC and Indian tribes that are reported as SDBs, and all subcontract award data for ANCs and Indian tribes that are not small businesses. This report also collects subcontract awards for historically black colleges and universities, and minority institutions for the Department of Defense, the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, and the Coast Guard. Defense Federal Acquisition Regulation 246.870, Contractors Counterfeit Electronic Part Detection and Avoidance Systems, 246.870-0 Scope. This section, in A, partially implements Section 818C and E of the National Defense Authorization Act for fiscal year 2012, that's PUB L 112-81, as amended by Section 817 of the National Defense Authorization Act for fiscal year 2015, Pub L 113-291, and Section 885 of the National Defense Authorization Act for fiscal year 2016, Pub L 114-92, and in Section B, prescribes policy and procedures for preventing counterfeit electronic parts and suspect counterfeit electronic parts from entering the supply chain when procuring electronic parts or end items, components, parts, or assemblies that contain electronic parts. To summarize the Caap program, avoid counterfeit parts and products, select, qualify, audit, and monitor suppliers, enforce and verify flow-down to subcontractors, monitor customer government sources of counterfeit information, detection of counterfeits, associate awareness, training, and responsibility, a robust inspection and testing program, integration into the PMP plan, part of the quality culture, reduce counterfeit part impact, select high-yield and available components from reputable original component manufacturers, qualify alternate parts, prepare for obsolescence before end of life, safely dispose of counterfeit parts, comprehensive containment procedure, full documentation and reporting of all incidents, drive corrective actions back to the supplier. Legislative actions are as follows. The following is the criteria for audit. Regulatory information resources are as follows. Thank you for watching. If you have any questions, feel free to give us a call or email us, and we'll get back with you at the earliest convenience. This has been a production of Dynamic Contracts Consultants.